You know what I like about you. You finally shut up. No speeches, no explanations, no desperate little updates about how you're working on yourself. Just silence. And now they're nervous, because when you were loud, they could track you, handle you, label you. But when you go quiet, oh, then you become a problem. They don't fear your pain. They fear your absence. They could live with you broken, crying, apologizing every 2 minutes. That version of you was easy to predict, easy to dismiss. But now you're not performing your suffering anymore. You're not broadcasting your confusion. You disappeared into your own head, and suddenly everyone starts wondering if they were the villain in your story. Your silence is not peaceful to them. It's suspicious. People say they want you to heal, but what they really want is access. They want to monitor your progress like a stock chart. Up today, down tomorrow, nothing threatening. As long as you keep talking, they feel safe. Because words are leashes. They tie you to expectations. Silence. Silence is you taking the scissors. Look at how they react. Are you okay? Translation, are you still predictable? You've changed. Translation, my control isn't working. You don't talk like before. Translation, I can't read you. And that scares me. They don't miss you. They miss their ability to categorize you. Loud equals harmless. Quiet equals unknown. And people are terrified of the unknown, unless it's happening to someone else. You notice how they suddenly become kind when you stop oversharing. When you stop justifying every move, they start treating you like a loaded question. They don't know whether to feel guilty, relieved, or threatened, so they test you. They poke you with little messages, memes, old jokes. Remember when? They're not being friendly. They're checking your temperature. You used to give them everything, your thoughts, your doubts, your breakdowns at 3 in the morning. You thought that made you honest. No, it made you easy to map. You were an open book, and everyone loves an open book because they can skip to the parts that entertain them and ignore the pages where you bleed. Now you've closed the cover, and they're stuck staring at a title they don't recognize anymore. You didn't just go silent. You revoked their backstage pass. No more rehearsals in front of them. No more narrating your every fear. You kept the show running, but you shut the curtain. And now they're outside, pressing their faces against the glass, trying to see if the lights are still on inside you. They want proof that you're still the same character they wrote in their head. You're not. Your silence is a crime to them because they confuse access with entitlement. They think knowing everything about you is a human right they earned by existing near you. The moment you stop delivering emotional updates on demand, they act like you betrayed some unspoken contract. They wanted the live stream of your mind. You switched to private mode without notice. Now they're panicking like investors during a crash. They liked you exhausted. They liked you explaining yourself. They liked you over-clarifying your intentions, so they never had to wonder where they stood in your life. Now it's their turn to sit in doubt, their turn to replay conversations, their turn to ask themselves, did I push too far? Did I say something wrong? You see the irony. All the overthinking they dumped on you is finally returning to sender. Silence flips the interrogation chair. When you keep talking, they get to analyze your tone, your wording, your timing. They get to call you dramatic, sensitive, unstable. But when you stop responding, when you stop reacting, there's nothing left to dissect. Now the only thing left in the room is their own conscience, echoing off the walls they built around you. They don't know if you're healing or plotting. That's the part that really gets under their skin. If they could label you as recovering, they could relax. If they could label you as broken, they'd feel superior. But you're not giving them any labels. You're giving them silence, and human beings are allergic to unanswered questions. They will invent entire stories about you just to avoid admitting they might be the problem. You know why silence freaks them out? Because it breaks the script. They were used to your role, the apologizer, the explainer, the forgiver, the emotional garbage collector. The one who always came back to talk it out, smooth it over, keep the peace. But you went off script. No dramatic speech. No closure. Just gone. And nothing terrifies a control freak like an exit without a monologue. They tell themselves you're being immature. Oh, they're just doing the silent treatment. Cute little phrase. Makes them feel like they still understand you. No, this is not a tantrum. This is a system shut down. You turned off the power supply they were feeding on. You cut off the emotional electricity that kept their ego lit. Let them sit in the dark for a while. Let them feel how cold it is without your energy keeping their world warm. You think they're worried about you. They're worried about what you know. All the secrets they told you when they assumed you'd always stay soft. All the times they underestimated you, thinking you were too naive to see their patterns. Now they remember jokes they made at your expense, manipulations they pulled, lies they slipped in casually. And all they can ask themselves is, if you're quiet, what exactly are you remembering? Every read receipt you don't answer is a mirror. Every message left unseen is a trial. They start defending themselves in their own head, doing little rehearsed speeches for conversations you never attend. They want you to come back and say, "It's okay, I'm fine, I'm not mad, I understand." They aren't asking for your healing. They're asking for your permission to not feel guilty. Don't you love how they suddenly respect boundaries once they suspect you might not be as harmless as they thought? When you were accessible, they treated you like a vending machine. Press a few buttons, get emotional validation, attention, entertainment. Now the machine is unplugged. No snacks, no refunds. Just a big out of order sign in your eyes. And that sign says, "I saw everything. I'm done explaining." Here's the fun part: they don't even know if you're actually calm. You might be healing, becoming sharper, colder, more selective. Or you might be cataloging every red flag, every insult, every little moment where they showed you what you really meant to them. That ambiguity is torture to people who like to stay in denial. Silence doesn't just hide your thoughts. It forces them to meet their own. You used to argue, defend yourself, write paragraphs trying to correct their version of the story. That was cute. They loved that. Because as long as you're arguing, they're still the main character. Your anger still circles around them. But silence demotes them. It cuts their importance. It says, "You're not worth the performance anymore." That's not healing. That's upgrading. They will say you're cold now, detached, heartless. They always use those words on people who stop playing the emotional pet. When you no longer react on command, they label you like a threat report. But they know the truth. You didn't turn into a villain. You just retired from being their victim. You took their script, tore it in half, and started improvising your own. Listen carefully. People don't want you stable. They want you stable enough to serve them, unstable enough to control. Emotionally available, but only when it benefits them. Vulnerable, but never empowered. They call it wanting the old you back. They don't miss you. They miss having that version of you that didn't question anything. Your silence ruins their nostalgia. They can't replay the highlight reel without remembering how it ended. The laughs, the inside jokes, the late night conversations. They all lived on the assumption that you'd always be there, always forgiving, always explaining. Now those memories are contaminated with the simple fact that you walked away without a speech. You ended the season without a final episode. You know what silence does better than any revenge plan? It rearranges the roles. They thought they were the judge and you were the defendant. Always showing up, always explaining, always justifying. Now you've left the courtroom and they're stuck alone at the bench, arguing with themselves. No jury, no audience, just them and the evidence of how they treated you. They will tell others their version, of course. They ghosted me. They cut me off. They're acting strange. They'll leave out the part where they drained you, where they talked over you, where they dismissed your concerns until you stopped presenting them. They can rewrite the story all they want, but deep down in that little quiet spot they avoid, they know why you went silent. People treat your words like background noise until you stop speaking. Then suddenly every old sentence you ever said comes back like a forensic report. The jokes you didn't laugh at, the warnings they ignored, the boundaries you timidly tried to set. They remember now, because silence sharpens memory. It forces them to revisit every moment where they misread you as weak. You stopped begging to be understood. That's the shift they can't process. Human beings worship being understood. They will overshare, over-explain, even humiliate themselves just to feel seen. You walked away from that obsession. You accepted that most people don't want to understand you. They just want material to judge you. So you shut down the supply. Suddenly they're starving. You're not punishing them. That's what confuses them the most. Punishment would mean you still want them to learn, to improve, to come back differently. No, You're not running an ethics class. You're running a quiet experiment. What happens when I stop feeding people information about me? And the results are in paranoia, projection, sudden politeness, and desperate attempts to decode your every move. They start asking others about you. Have you talked to them? Did they say anything about me? They turn your silence into a social investigation. Your name becomes a rumor instead of a reality. People start filling in blanks with their own fears. Some will say you're finally taking care of yourself. Others will say you've become dangerous. Both of them are afraid you might agree with the second opinion. Let's admit it, you became unpredictable, and society hates that. They tell you to be authentic, but what they really want is consistency, predictability, patterns they can monetize, control, or comfortably ignore. Your silence broke the pattern. Now, every time your name pops up on a screen, every time you walk into a room, there's a tiny tension, a little question mark hanging above you. What do they know? What do they remember? What do they plan? And here's the twist, you don't even need a plan. The idea that you might have one is enough. People behave better around someone whose inner world they can't access. They watch their words. They choose their jokes carefully. They think twice before stepping on you again. Not because you threaten, because they can't calculate the consequences anymore. Your silence turned you from a toy into a variable. You used to talk to be liked. Then you talk to be understood. Now you're quiet because you finally understood something. Most people listen to reply, not to reflect. They collect your words like ammunition for later arguments. So you disarm them, you remove the supply, and suddenly their conversations feel shallow, even to themselves. They can't use you as a mirror anymore. They're stuck looking at their own reflection. How many times did you rehearse the perfect speech in your head? The one where you explained everything, how they hurt you, how you felt, how you tried. You thought if you delivered it perfectly, they'd finally get it. They wouldn't. They were never confused. They knew what they were doing. Your silence is not because you ran out of words. It's because you ran out of excuses for them. They call it growth when they move on without looking back. They call it cold when you do the same. Interesting little double standard, isn't it? When they detach, it's healthy. When you detach, it's alarming, threatening, suspicious. They're allowed to prioritize themselves. You're supposed to prioritize their feelings about you prioritizing yourself. That's why silence feels like rebellion. You stopped performing emotional labor. You stopped giving them the chance to twist your words. No more screenshots of long messages. No more group discussions dissecting your feelings like a case study. They have nothing, just a blank space where your explanations used to be. And human beings hate blanks. They will fill them with whatever makes them feel less guilty. Let them. Their story doesn't change your reality. Your silence does. Notice how your presence feels heavier now. Same face, same body, different energy. You don't chase, you don't clarify, you observe. You hear what people actually say underneath the sugar. When they joke about the old you, you just watch. When they test the boundary, you don't give a lecture. You just don't respond. And that quiet no is louder than any speech you could give. Your silence forces selection. The ones who only valued you for your availability will fade out. They'll label you difficult, distant, weird. Good. Let them go find someone else to drain. The few who respect your quiet, who don't push for access, who stay without demanding a full tour of your inner chaos, those are the ones actually seeing you, not the version they built. You. Here's the cruel truth. Your silence is starting to do what your explanations never did. It's teaching people who you really are. Not because you're showing them, because they're finally noticing what life looks like without your constant presence, without your constant reassurance, without your constant yes. Human beings don't appreciate what doesn't threaten to leave. You left. Now they understand. So are you healing or plotting? They keep asking that question in their heads like it changes anything. Healing, plotting, observing, detaching. Pick any word you want. All of them have one thing in common. You're no longer under their control. That's the real threat. Not what you'll do next, but the fact that whatever you do, it won't be for their comfort anymore. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them performance. You don't owe them visible progress, public forgiveness, or dramatic reconciliation. You don't owe them a final speech where you tie the bow, absolve them, and let them sleep better at night. Sometimes the most honest thing you can give someone is the consequence of never hearing from you again. So let them wonder, let them replay, speculate, diagnose you in conversations you never attend. Let them talk about how you've changed as if that's an insult. You didn't become colder. You became quiet enough to hear yourself think. And once you hear yourself clearly, their noise stops sounding like authority. They're not afraid you're broken. They're afraid you woke up. They're afraid that in your silence you finally heard the one voice they can't control, your own. And the moment you trust that voice more than their version of you, you stop being a character in their script and become something they never prepared for, an unknown. You know what really amuses me? They still think silence means nothing is happening, as if the lack of noise equals the lack of movement. That's adorable. The loud ones think they're running the world because they never stop talking. Meetings, group chats, stories, calls, constant noise, constant broadcasting. But the real decisions, the real shifts, the real power moves, those never announce themselves. In your quiet, you started seeing patterns. Who only calls when they need a favor? Who only checks in when they're bored? Who only remembers you when their better options are busy? You never noticed it clearly before because you were too busy explaining yourself. Silence gave you a sick little gift: clarity. Names, faces, habits, all lining up in front of you like suspects. You realized most conversations weren't conversations at all, just performances. People love having you there as the audience to their highlight reel. They rant, they brag, they trauma dump, they philosophize. Then they vanish when it's your turn to speak. That's why your silence is so offensive. You stopped clapping. You stopped sitting in the cheap seat of their theater, nodding along like a polite extra. And the funniest part, they call you mysterious now, as if you suddenly developed depth. You always had depth. They were just too self-absorbed to notice. Your silence didn't add anything new. It just removed their distractions. Now they catch glimpses of the real you in the spaces that used to be filled with nervous jokes and over-explanations. They don't like what they see because it doesn't revolve around them. You learn to enjoy that little moment when someone asks you a loaded question and you answer with nothing, just a look, just a pause. Humans can't handle pauses. They rush to fill them with excuses, with explanations, with confessions they were never asked for. You barely have to interrogate anyone. Just go quiet, and they start cross-examining themselves. Notice how your reputation shifts without you saying a single word. To the guilty, you're dangerous. To the insecure, you're arrogant. To the entitled, you're ungrateful. To the observant, you're simply done playing. Same silence, different interpretation. People don't see you as you are. They see you as a reflection of whatever they're scared to admit about themselves. You becoming quiet exposed something ugly, how addicted they were to your emotional availability. You were on call like a psychological emergency service. Day or night, message or call, you were there, comforting, advising, listening. You thought that made you a good person. They thought that made you a permanent resource. Then one day, the line went dead, and suddenly they had to face their crisis without using your sanity as a crutch. Silence is not you closing your heart. It's you closing the revolving door. Same building, fewer visitors. You're not harder to reach. You're just not free to access. Now people need a reason, not a habit. Intent, not convenience. That shift ruins the tourists, the ones who wandered in and out of your life like your time, attention, and energy were part of a free exhibit they could visit whenever they felt lonely. You know why they keep asking mutual friends about you. Because they're hoping someone will tell them what they want to hear. No, they're not mad at you. They're just busy. They're not looking for the truth. They're looking for a sedative, a little verbal sleeping pill that lets them continue their life without adjusting a single behavior. Your silence stole that comfort. No more reassurance by proxy. They'll say you're overreacting even now, even after everything, because from their perspective, anything that disrupts their comfort is an overreaction. You could write 1,000 pages of detailed evidence and they'd still shrug. But the one thing they can't shrug off, can't debate, can't argue with is absence. You can't gaslight a void. You can't argue with a missing seat at the table. That's why your silence is freaking them out more than your anger ever did. Angry you could be negotiated with, guilted, goaded into another argument, manipulated into apologizing for raising your voice. But quiet you doesn't take the bait. Quiet you doesn't show up to the emotional circus. Quiet you lets the tent collapse without warning. They'll pretend they don't care. That's their favorite trick. I'm not bothered. They can do whatever they want. Very convincing except for the part where they keep bringing you up. Keep checking your profile. Keep stalking your last scene. Indifference doesn't monitor. Detachment doesn't investigate. Whatever they say, their curiosity exposes them. Here's the part no one likes to admit. Your silence made you scarier because it made you real. Not the pleasant version, not the accommodating version, not the endlessly understanding version. The version that has limits. The version that can walk away. The version that can see through people without writing a report about it. That version of you was always there. You just finally stopped smothering it to make others comfortable. You're not the hero of their story anymore. You're not the sidekick either. You became something much worse in their narrative, a consequence. A living, breathing consequence of how they treated you. And people hate consequences. They will deny, minimize, accuse, even rewrite entire timelines just to avoid admitting that your silence is not random, it's earned. So they sit there wondering, are you healing? Are you plotting? Are you done? Are you waiting? Are you building a new life where they're not invited? Are you collecting yourself quietly before making a move they'll never see coming? All these questions, swirling around, keeping them up at night sometime. And the punchline, you don't owe them an answer to a single one. Because the truth is simple, your silence already answered them. They just don't like what it said, and they never will. That's why you don't speak. That's why they tremble whenever they remember you.